Well, as we clean out the offices that were the home of the Smoke Me news leader for the past 12 and a half years, it's kind of amazing the kind of things that you find that have been tucked away and kept for whatever the reason. This particular item is called a Waxmaster automatic, and this was actually used when I first started with the newspaper 16 years ago, but technology has pretty much made this thing obsolete. Now that people use PDF files and computers and things to send pages to print shops and whatnot, but at the time this was the standard that was used. And primarily, I'll show you how this thing works. Underneath this plate is a big heater where wax would go. You would put a chunk of wax in here, and we've got some of those somewhere. This would actually heat it up and melt it up. And so there's temperature control here and all the other things that you needed to do. On switch, of course. Anyway, but that's where the wax would go. And so when we were laying out pages, the big giant pages that we would print off the computers were on a special kind of paper, and so we would feed it through here. And what would happen, this roller would spin it, the page through, and it would run, this particular drum would have a thin layer of wax that had been melted from underneath, and so it would end up on these little arms, if you will, and then you would have little strings, if you will, of or lines of wax on the back of the paper. And so that would be how we would adhere say a cutout ad or a cutout picture or something, or a column of writing onto the layout pages that we had that we would use to lay out the newspaper. And I showed some of that in a previous video, but this is how the wax was applied to those pages to make them stick to the layout pages. Now, in order to cut those to fit, we would use these X-Acto mats, and there's an X-Acto knife here. And so this is how we would cut these things, using a ruler, and cut the pages to fit, or the elements to fit, and then we would stick them on to the layout pages that we're putting together, but only after it went through the Waxmaster. So anyway, this is how we used to do things, and really not that long ago, to be honest with you. So it's kind of amazing how much the technology has changed in a short period of time to actually make this machine more or less a dinosaur. A big giant paperweight, actually. But as it turns out, I kind of like to keep sort of pieces of memorabilia of some of the things I've done. So this one is probably going to be part of our lives for a little while, and I don't know, maybe put it on display sometime, or I'm not sure what will happen to it, but my wife said, yeah, you should keep that, and so we're keeping it. Anyway, that's just one way that we used to do our job, and long before computers basically, like I said, made these things obsolete. So there you go, a little bit of history.